Thank you for tuning in to The Big Promise. My name is Zach Robbins, and I'm here with Patty Davison, and we appreciate you for joining us today for 30 minutes of fantastic radio. On The Big Promise, we take a look at how the people we trust to act in our best interest, whether or not they are elected, appointed, or otherwise, make decisions that benefit not a few of the people, not a handful of the people, but all of the people. We want to know if those who promise to take care of everyday people are keeping that promise. Every episode, Patty and I will come on the air and give you the 30 minutes of the best that we can give you. The opinions on our show are ours and not the opinions of your local radio station or media platform. Today, we will look at how the people who we trust to act in our best interest are keeping their promise to ensure our voices were heard during these 2020 elections. Patty, you have had friends, families, and co-workers who are doing things to help ensure that everyone has their voices heard during this historic election season. We've just been talking about that.
I think, Zach, what you say is we have had family and friends, but in light of what just happened yesterday, I think it just really showed where we are in Nevada. Yes, everybody came out and voted. We had record numbers that came out and voted. It was wonderful. It was great. But what is the most interesting thing is that this blue state that usually votes blue really went up and down that ticket, and we almost became red. And we still may. We don't know yet. We're still counting vote. I think that what we saw here was, again, we're going to go back to, I know last show we talked about this a little bit. This is what Nevada is right now. Nevada is one of the hardest hit states in the whole nation due to COVID. And it all comes back to COVID. We all want to ignore it. We want to pretend there's elections, but guess what? COVID played a place here. And I think that I truly believe that this vote, we didn't become red. What we did was become anti-current government because we feel abandoned.
The one thing I understand what you're saying, and it's not that I can deny what you're saying, because there's a lot of truth in what you're saying, because folks have really responded to how COVID has hit them and how it's hit their families. I know I have friends who've had family members who've lost family members, who they themselves have been bedridden by COVID. I mean, I've had folks who I've had to call who've been in the hospital because of COVID. And believe me, folks have responded, just like folks have responded to how COVID has impacted their bottom lines in their homes and their jobs, and just being able to just put food on the table. But the thing that I really appreciate about what's been going on with this whole election season is the nonpartisan effort in Nevada just to make sure everyone's voice was heard. Just the way that everyone pitched in to make sure that everyone understood their voters' rights, the way that everyone made sure that they got their family members and friends to the polls, the way that everyone said, hey, everyone be patient. We understand that this is a historic election, the way we understood that, some lines may be long, but still you can use the mail-in ballot, the way that the Secretary of State did everything that they were supposed to do to make sure that the elections went smoothly. I'm just very happy that we saw the spirit of being neighborly in Nevada so that we can all exercise that right to vote.
Mike, I think where you're talking about is true. We didn't have riots. We didn't have, even though the police, extra 650 cops were out there waiting for something terrible to happen, and it didn't happen. And so that's the good thing about it. We talk about, did we do our best to make sure our voice was heard? Let's talk about it. Was our voice heard? It was heard loud and clear. It was heard. It said, you know what? We are tired of the current situation in Nevada. We are tired of the leadership in this town. We are tired of our unions abandoning us. We are tired, and so therefore, and Democrats will they'll cross party lines and they'll vote. And I think when the numbers come out, we're going to see that they crossed party lines. And they said, anti-Democrat. It's almost like we said, are you voting against, Donald Trump, or are you voting for Biden, or is it just a vote against? It's like a suppression vote or something like that. They came out and they spoke loud and clear, and their voice is being heard.
And I don't want to just paint with a broad brush and say that a lot of what we saw was, I know there was a lot of emotion that drove people to go out. A lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of things that just drove people, different motivations that got people to go out and participate. A lot of first-time voters, a lot of younger voters came out, and I understand that, but I also don't want to go as far as to say that it was all the fear or the negative stuff that drove people out. So I don't want to also say that. What I also want to make sure that we understand is that people went out just because they knew it was the right thing to do. People went out not just motivated by anything that was negative, but they went out because they wanted to affirm that good things were also happening. So I don't want to just say that it was all, and I'm not saying that you're saying it was all negative, but some people were pleased that they saw progress happening. Though this was a terrible thing, people were pleased that we were doing the right things to stem the curve of COVID. People were pleased that we were doing the right things, that we were making progress trying to get the economy back up and running. While it may not be as successful as we'd like, I don't want to say that every single person that went out, or that I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush.
I think you're talking to a different group than I'm talking to, because the people that went out to vote, the people I know that really would usually not go out to vote, they went out to vote because they were just purely angry. They weren't scared. They were angry. Their job is gone. I have friends moving out of state. I have people moving because there's no jobs here. And you know what the even crazier part is that I'm going back to who's in charge. Who's in charge? The unions are supposed to be in charge, right? Aren't they supposed to take care of the people who pay their dues? Don't they usually have a great influence on election outcomes and those kind of things? Do you know that I have a friend who's actually taken his family moving out of state. Every time he called his union, first it was, I can't get my unemployment. Oh, the casinos are struggling. The next was, he got laid off. He went back to get his vacation pay. Same answer. Oh, the casinos are struggling. I'm sorry. Aren't unions supposed to represent the people who pay dues to them?
Absolutely.
And it just feels like, you know what? The only people who survived in this town are the casinos and big business. And going back to COVID, and I think that's what drove this vote out. And this vote really became an we're tired of the current status.
Tired of the current status in terms of, I am tired of the current status in terms of folks not doing enough to help us get through COVID, or tired of the current status of us talking too much about COVID?
I think that the current status of not helping and not caring for the individual, because the individual just got, it was like we said, when unemployment ran out, it just ran out. Did our state government do anything to help the person again? No, they didn't do anything. They took big bailout and gave it to the casinos. They took big bail up in North Las Vegas and gave it to the government. But did they help the individual again? No. This vote that came out that turned us, had our Democrats voting Republican, was an we are tired of the way that this government is running this town.
I just can't say that. Of course, I haven't seen, of course, we don't have all the results.
Right.
So I can't sit back and just say that all these Democrats voted Republican, because we don't have the results yet. I agree. We don't have the results yet. So I think on both sides, you had some folks who voted for one party. I think you have people in both parties who flipped for whatever reason. So I can't say that it was more on one side or the other. I think that based on the way government has handled, like you say, the pandemic, how government has handled the economy, definitely has impacted the way people have flipped. Because if I'm doing well because of what government has done for me, and I'm a business owner, so yeah, I'm going to be supportive. But if all of a sudden I can't get my unemployment check, so I'm out of a job, and I just don't see a pathway forward, yeah, I'm going to think differently about how I vote.
I think that we were kind of hoping we would sit down today and go, you know what, we get to put some of those emotions to the side now, and we get to move on, because again, it's been through so much negative, whenever you talk to somebody, and you and I discussed a little bit yesterday, it's like, when I sit down and the only thing I had to talk about is I don't have a job. What am I going to do for money? I can't pay my mortgage. You start talking, that's the only people you talk to. So pretty soon, everybody you talk to is in that same mindset. And so you can't really move forward. And then they would blame it on, blame it on government, blame it on somebody. It's somebody else's fault. Somebody should have taken care of me, looking at it from the flip side. And we were hoping that it would kind of be over today and we could start moving, know, but we're still there.
So what is it that, in your opinion, when you have these sorts of situations, when we've had so much of the negative emotion, how do you begin to see opportunities now? Because right now folks want to move on and they want to do things that are different. Folks have to see opportunities. They have to move their lives. No matter how this thing turns out, how do people begin to see opportunities?
I think that, after, an election, it's like, okay, you know what, we built up, high emotion. And even if it takes us a few days to, really figure things out, I mean, at our local level, they'll be figured out sooner than that. That, now there's no choice. You have to move on. There's no point in continuing to blame other people, for what's happening in your life. It's time now to take back control. And how do you take control? You can only control yourself.
Right.
And so now, you're controlling yourself. Maybe it's that, what, I'm not going to focus on all these negative things anymore, and all these things that are making me angry and making me feel like I'm depressed because I can't control them, because you can't. You can only control yourself, right? And so maybe just start moving, start celebrating the little things, start, like little baby steps, but, focus on something good that happens to you. Start talking to people about good things, the good things about, having your kids home and you're homeschooling. It's
Right.
kind of cool. I'm spending time with them.
Right.
Maybe if we start focusing on the good instead of the negative, that we can start seeing things again. We can see some opportunity, because right now, blinders, we can't see opportunity.
It's hard. It's hard when things have been hard. It's hard sometimes to see opportunities when in the midst of struggle. And some people, I think, are wired better to just be perpetually positive. I do think that some people are just wired that way. So what do you say to people who, I haven't been able to pay my mortgage, I haven't been able to put food on the table, I have been out here hustling hard, trying to get a job, I haven't had as much success. The ball just hasn't bounced the way that I've seen it bounce for others in this very, very challenging time. And it's an unprecedented challenging time. What do you say to those people how do you give them hope, and how do you help them see?
I think that it's a way of looking at things. It's perspective, and so if you look at things, and you can look at it one way, just like you said, I can look at it and say, I can't put food on the table. I can say, I've been hustling. It's hard, and so you keep in your head, you're straight in your head, oh man, I just don't know what to do. But what if you said, you know what, I haven't been able to pay my mortgage, but it's still my house.
Right.
At least, I haven't been evicted. I still have a roof over my head. And there is aid out there. There is. You
Thank
can go
goodness
get
for
a
the
car.
folks who've helped us with that.
So let me just get through this, using the resources that are available to me. And let me start focusing on, again, putting it into a different way of saying it, because it changes your mindset. If your mindset is so negative, poor me, I can't do this, and compared to, I got some resources, it gives me some time, I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to try maybe every day, just one thing that's positive, one thing. And I think that when you talk about, some people just seem like everything always falls for them. I bet if you talk to them very much, they don't dwell on negative.
Count
They
the
just
blessings
don't.
that you have.
Count the blessings that you have. Enjoy the moment. Those kind of things. And if you start doing that, instead of looking into the past that you can't change it. Lost your job, great, you lost your job. That's the way it is, you can't change it. So you got to live for today, and look to the future, but don't live for the future either. Today, every day. You have to get up and you have to go, this is a good day.
Staying in the moment. Being able to have our voices heard through the vote is to be able to take control of our destinies. We were talking about this. And government promises to give us the means to vote. And government promises to respect the outcome of the people's vote. Now that the high emotions of this election are almost over, they're not over yet, we can't fall into the pattern of complacency and not caring as much about our smaller elections, local elections, elections that don't happen in presidential years. So, the elections for the people who fix our streets, influence sentencing for prisoners, gives grants for initiatives, makes decisions about education and things like that, which occur in not just presidential election years, but the non-presidential election years. They impact us dramatically. So we can't get distracted, because there are definitely going to be some other distractions after this that may make people say, well, I don't need to vote in that off-presidential year election. Patty, I know you have some pretty strong thoughts about this, actually some very good thoughts about this that we were just talking about not too long ago.
We were talking about is complacency. Everybody was charged up. And in a way, we go back to, well, how do you get people together? Give them a common cause or a common enemy, one or the other. Give them something to do, something to do. Everybody was so tired, again, going back to COVID, everybody's so tired of all the fallout from the pandemic that they really got charged up about this election. They're like, yes, I'm going to make a change. My voice is going to be heard. I'm going to have an effect here. And so that's why we have record numbers of people voting.
Right.
It's because, they really got charged up.
Which is fantastic.
Which was great. But what happens now, Do you go back to, go back into depression? Do you go back into, getting into the fantasy world of football? Do you go back into binge watching?
Fantasy football, Patty.
I know
like
you
fantasy
do.
Football.
I know. When I said that, I said, I'm going to hear back about this, but it's okay, But you don't live in your fantasy world.
No.
And that's what people do, and that's what this has caused. What you said, local elections, that's where we can have the most effect, the absolute most effect. If things aren't going well for us, you need to pay attention. Know what's going on in your area. Don't lose sight that, this was so much fun, but this was national.
Right.
Is that going to affect my day-to-day life?
Right.
It's not.
Right. It's so important. I'll never forget, when I was a tyke coming up, and I remember I was living in Washington, D.C., and, one of the things we always complained about was potholes, because it was an awful situation. So I remember I was a young teacher at the time, and one of the senior teachers there said, you got your car towed up from a pothole. Are you going to vote in the local? Are you going to vote? Do you know who are the people who actually care about that issue? If you care about your car, you'd find out, young guy. But and that's just one example. But then you start to think about, your district attorney, your sheriff, the people who have such a large impact on what happens in your life. Just making sure that you don't lose focus as we get to these non-presidential year elections, because the person that lives 30 miles from you, who you don't know, may be making a decision that has a dramatic impact on your quality of life.
Think about, we elect officials to things like our school board. These are elected officials, and they are basically telling us how we're going to educate our children. That's a big deal. And if you don't even if you can't even name who's representing you in your area, then probably you're complacent. And you may be going to school board meetings, and you may be yelling and screaming and saying this isn't fair, but did you even know who you gave the power of decision making to?
Right.
And so that's what you and I we're on the same plate on this one, is that, man, don't lose what you have going here. People woke up. It's like they woke up and they decided to pay attention. Don't go back to sleep and let the powers that be make decisions for you, and you have no say-so in it. Local elections can be won by 50 votes.
Right.
You can have a real effect in the outcome of these. This isn't like we're looking at millions of votes. Sometimes we're looking at hundreds in some of these races. So people just need to stay focused. And we talk about how are we going to come out of this? Stay involved, and don't just talk about what's going on, that's terrible.
Right.
Talk about, changes that you actually could help make.
Right. It's so important. We're talking about making sure our voice is heard. One of the things that is a part of the narrative right now is this thing about voter intimidation. So I know that I've been really impressed with how the nation has coalesced in some places to make sure that we were really clear that we will not let the people's voices be silenced. And I love the fact that here in Nevada, it's across party lines, that everyone was on the same page of, no, we're going to make sure that everyone's vote is counted. There's not going to be some sort of chicanery. There's not going to be some sort of foolishness. There's not even going to be a question. We have our system set up in a way so well here in our state that we're going to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. If you need to go on the same day and register for whatever reason, maybe you just got here because so many people moved to Nevada, we're going to make sure you're good to go. But then you look at some places where they're ripping up the mailboxes and all kind of foolishness. I'm just happy that here that we're doing the right thing, but I also look at other places where I'm seeing that this sort of intimidation happen. So that's problematic. But what's really great is throughout the country, the majority of the country, you saw people saying, and even in the court systems, folks are ruling saying, no, we're not going to do anything to disrupt our election process.
I think, voter intimidation, this, again, I'm going to go back to this sounds like, oh, I couldn't go vote because the mailbox got ripped up. No, you probably could have found someplace else to go. What is this? Take control of your life.
Right.
This is what we need to do now. People need to take control of their own lives. That's how we crawl out of all of this. Don't count on somebody to, pick you up and dust you off and say, it's going to be okay. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to give you this. Take control of your life. You can, we are strong. Humans are strong, and they forget. They forget and they say, oh, I'm going to count on government, or I'm going to count on, this is almost the opposite of what I was, saying before, but you can't count on anybody else. We've been shown that. You can't count on government to pay your rent. They're not doing it. You can't count on unions to find you a job. They're not going to do it. They don't have it. They don't have to. And so therefore they're not. So it's up to you as individual, just like it would have been up to you to go find a place to cast your ballot. But apparently a lot of people did.
And apparently a whole bunch of people did. It's so wild because, we haven't been here before. We haven't been in a situation where it's such a great moment because so many people are participating in this advanced citizenship. Everyone is coming out. So many people are coming out. And it makes you ask yourself, how come we haven't done this before? Let's get as many people plugged in as we can. And it's so funny because when we sit back, well, it's not funny at all when you look at some states where folks are not seeking to actively do that. That's why I'm just so proud of our folks here in Nevada. And if you're still looking for information on how you can make sure you understand all of your voters' rights, you can go to the Nevada Secretary of State's webpage, and it's all right there. There's such a long, frequently asked questions section of the Nevada Secretary of State's website that has everything there. It is very, very impressive. So I'm just very proud of our folks here who are doing the right thing to make sure that all the citizens have what they need to make sure they cast their ballot so they can take control of their life. I had a friend of mine who actually had a family member who just moved here. And again, let's go. Let's go. Let's make sure you can cast your ballot. It's so important.
I guess our message today is it's time now to move on. We're ready. That we worked up to this. It took months. Everybody was just fired up. You would have two topics, right? Who's going to win the presidency, and what are we going to do about COVID? And we've been talking about that. That's 2020. That's our whole conversation. So as we hit 2021, we just have to go, there has to be a change. And so the change has to come from the individuals, though. It's not going to come from the top. It has to come from a ground movement that says, we're going to take control of our town again. We're going to take control of our jobs again, because there is opportunity. But people they haven't been able to see it because they've been so focused on everything that's been terrible, or so focused on the, the common cause enemy, whatever it is. So they've been so focused that they can't look around. I look around our offices and I go, wow, we should have been in the plexiglass business, right? But so some people will always see opportunity, and those are the people that you look at and go, man, they just always seem lucky. No, they always see positive is what they see, and they see opportunity in that. So it's now for us to take a step back, forget everything that happened in 2020, just forget it. And we're only 2 months away into the next year, and just start going, you know what, next year is going to be a great year. Next year we're going to take control. Next year we're going to find a way to save this town, because we love Las Vegas. Do we want it to run into the ground? Everybody across the nation is going, oh, this town's going to tank. It's going to be terrible. Everybody's going to move away.
Yeah, we're too resilient for that.
We are.
Yeah, we're too resilient for that. And if you don't forget everything in 2020, you have the things that you remember, but you don't use it as an anchor or a crutch. So here's the thing. As we go into 2021, and we actually go into 2022 and we have our local elections, my hope is that we have the same sort of enthusiasm, because as we have people who make decisions on our behalf, we need to make sure that folks are making the decisions that truly uplift communities, because we vote for the communities that we have. We vote for the cities that we have, because the people who represent us do represent us, and we are responsible for holding them accountable with their votes.
I think that, it's empowering. And that's what people need to feel right now, is empowered, because they feel like they're not in control of anything, because they've been, we're told, shut down, stay home, lose your job, take your kids home with you. All these rules that came out that they're saying, when did I agree to that? I never agreed to any of that. And yet it was forced upon them. And so now it's time to go, okay, we've done it for a while, and it's time for me to take control. We keep talking about control. That seems to be our theme today, because what the government promised us, that they would take care of us, but I'm not so sure that promise came through, at least through my perspective.
Right.
Perhaps government did what they said they were going to do, but from a lot of individual perspectives, because they're still thinking that it's not on them to change their own life. They're thinking, oh, government has let me down, union has let me down, I've been let down, but the only person who let you down is yourself.
Heck, you vote for your union reps. You know what I mean? It's just the whole notion. You take control. If folks are not doing what you need them to do, you drive in your neighborhood, you drive to your community center, and you don't see the experience that you want, then you take control through your vote. And that's the thing, like you said, the theme is control. The theme is control. And to not let anyone tell you otherwise, because sometimes it's unpopular to take the stand. Well, what would you rather have? The life that you want, and maybe you take a little heat for doing the unpopular thing, or do the unpopular, or not do the unpopular thing and just settle with something that you don't want.
And then you feel out of control again.
Right.
Yeah, because somebody made you do something.
Yeah. What is that? That makes no sense. So, Patty, it's almost time for us to wrap up. So let's check on the big promise to see if that promise was kept. So did the people that we trust to act in our best interest to keep their promise to ensure our voices were heard in this 2020 election, did they keep that promise to us? I'm
not sure if we know yet, because what are we hearing? Rumblings of going to the Supreme Court, rumblings of, we're going to, if it doesn't go my way, then we're going to have to recount, rumblings of all this. And so we're going to find out, because we feel that the big promise that government makes to us when it comes to elections is that they will respect the outcome of the election. Right. I think that my lean is yes, because right now it just doesn't even seem logical that there's even grounds, because there is an election process. We're going through that process now, and I understand you're right. Well, we don't know yet, because we don't know what the outcome is. So right now, I guess my thing is, actually, I think I just talked myself into your side. Right now, I don't know. Finally. Because right now, I guess you got to wait and see what the outcome is, because we've had the process. The government has to respect the outcome. We have to see if the outcome is going to be respected. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us for The Big Promise. I'm Zach Robbins. I'm Patty Davidson, and I think we should do another plug, Paul Patta. Yeah, Paul Patta Law Firm. Thank you so much for sponsoring our program. And shout out to all the great people out there who voted. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.